welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon. And today, we're going to be telling some scary stories from the world of Pokemon. The last 2 years, I have written these stories that take place within the world of Pokemon. They're not official canon, but kind of a head canon. And they just kind of showcase the terrifying side of Pokemon. Because some of these creatures, as much as we, want to go on picnics and make curry with them, they actually happen to be really terrifying. And the Dexes don't shy away from this. A lot of stories don't shy away from this. And I wanna shed some light on this because I think it's a really cool aspect of them. So today I've compiled a one big video of all the stories I've told over the last 2 years of these scary Pokemon stories. Enjoy. It was a long drive from Sterling's grandparents' house in Snowbell all the way back to Lumio City, but Sterling enjoyed it. He liked to see the snow gradually melt away, the beautiful orange and brown leaves covering the ground, and the eerie yet beautiful, enchanting woods next to the road. Sterling especially loved this part of the drive, as he'd sometimes see Fungus, Stantler. One time he was even lucky enough to see an Ursaring and 2 Teddy Ursa. So on this drive back, his eyes were glued to the window. "Dear," his mother spoke up from the front passenger seat, "the sun is beginning to set. Most of the Pokemon are already settled back into their homes. It's a long drive and you should start sleeping so you get your rest too. No Pokemon will be out." "Well," said his father from the front driver's seat, "you could see some Ghost-type Pokemon." Sterling's mom shuddered. "Don't even joke about that. You know I hate Ghost-types." As if on cue, there was a loud pop from the car. Sterling's father pulled over. "And the tire's flat," he declared after getting out of the car. "No worries, though. I'll call a 24-hour roadside repair company. Might take them a bit to reach us out here, though, with how far out we are." "If we're here for a while, can I get out of the car?" Sterling asked. "I want to stretch my legs." "Yeah, champ. Stay near the car, though, okay?" Sterling got out, looked around at some of the Pokemon tracks he could see. He knew them well. He loved Pokemon. Zigzagoon, Stantler, a bird Pokemon, Pidgey, maybe Fletchling. He even saw Ursaring tracks. He continued looking around for a bit. His dad was on the phone with the repair company at this point. It had been a while, so he was checking to see how much longer it would be. His mom was on the phone with his grandmother, no doubt trying to keep her mind off the ghost Pokemon his father had mentioned. As the sun continued to set, Sterling stared at the woods. It was almost like staring into a cave. Even with the sun still piercing the sky, the woods were so thick they looked pitch black. But then, a light? No, a flame. A purple flame. It first was floating, but then began moving in a circle. Then more appeared. This couldn't be an illusion from Zorua or Zoroark, could it? Sterling had heard they lived in the Winding Woods. The chance to see such a rare and cool Pokemon couldn't be passed up by a future trainer such as himself. So Sterling picked himself up and slowly approached the flames. They moved further and further back into the woods. Sterling followed. And then all of a sudden, they vanished. In their place stood a Pumpkaboo, a small-sized one. Very cute, but definitely not a Zorua or Zoroark. Sterling realized the flames he saw must have been the work of Pumpkaboo's Will-O-Wisp. With a sigh, he turned around to head back to the car. But then he found himself at a pond. A pond wasn't here before, and he had only walked a straight path in the woods. He was sure of it. Maybe he missed the pond before. He kept trekking. Then, before him was a large tree, overgrown with mushrooms so big they looked like the max mushrooms from the Galar region he saw on TV. That definitely wasn't here before. A little more panicked, Sterling kept walking. Same pond from before? How? He was walking in the opposite direction of it. Fear really began to set in now. It was dark. The woods were so thick, Sterling didn't even know if the sun had set or if it was just so dark in the woods. He kept running and running and running, but he kept ending up at the same pond. He decided on another direction and ran and ran and ran, and then he woke up. He was lying in the grass. Looked around. There were flowers, more of the trees. He was still in the woods. Behind him was a large cliff. "Are you all right?" a voice called to him. He looked up and knew the Pokemon instantly. It was a Phantom. "Are you all right?" it asked again. "You seemed like you were having a bad dream." "What? You can talk?" Sterling asked, startled. Again, Sterling knew everything about Pokemon. He had to. After all, he had plans to become the Kalos champion one day. But he knew for a fact that Phantom couldn't talk. Yeah, the Phantom responded. It seemed as confused by Sterling's shock as Sterling was of its ability to speak. Sterling shook his head, figuring this was some kind of miracle. No Pokemon would know these woods better than a Phantom. Their evolved form Trevenant practically ran the place. So a talking one, and a seemingly friendly one at that, would definitely be a huge help in getting him back to the car. "No, I'm not all right," Sterling told the Phantom. "I need your help. There's a road that runs by here. I need to get there. My family and their car is there." "Ooh, like your trainer?" Despite the circumstances, Sterling chuckled. Being a Pokemon, the Phantom only knew humans to be Pokemon trainers. So a small kid such as Sterling had to belong to one of those trainers. "Something like that," he responded with a bit of a laugh. "Do you know the road?" "Of course," replied the Phantom excitedly. "Right this way." The Phantom led him over a little ways until they were at the pond once more. Only this time, in view and only just a few yards away, was the road. Sterling's parents, their car, and now even the repair crew was here. With flashlights aimed at the woods, his mother and father were frantically calling for him. Sterling felt a lump in his throat. He thought he was scared. He could only imagine how terrified his parents were. Sterling sprinted their way as fast as they can, the Phantom he met being a curious Pokemon right on his tail. As he came out from the clearing, his mother dropped her flashlight, shaking, pointing towards them and gasping. Sterling couldn't help but smile. His mom was so scared of ghost types that, of course, the thing she focuses on emerging from the woods is the Phantom, not her lost son. "Mariana, go!" one of the repairmen yelled, sending out the bite Pokemon. The Mariana looked fierce, and the Phantom behind Sterling yelled, "Let's get out of here," bolting back into the forest. Wanting to thank his new friend for his help, Sterling chased after him. "Wait!" he called. He chased him down to the pond, Phantom continuing to fly across it. Sterling stopped at the edge of the pond and yelled to it, "I just want to—" He froze. It fit him. Why the Phantom could speak. It couldn't really speak. He just could understand it now. He must have fallen that cliff. He had to have fallen. He looked down at the pond, and instead of seeing his face staring back at him, in his reflection he saw a Phantom. The desert was cold. Very cold. It's funny when one thinks of a desert, they think of how hot it is. And it is hot during the day, but few are aware of how low the temperatures get at night. Edgar traced back why this was happening to them. He had led a small research team consisting of himself, his wife Anna, and his longtime friend and colleague Dean, on an expedition to find the desert ruins, said to house an ancient Pokemon, one that, with its capture and the study of the ruins it resides in, could allow Edgar and his team to understand more about the history of Pokemon and people. That was his team's job as archaeologists, after all. But they had searched all day. Nothing. Now they were stuck here, at night. The desert winds tossing sand around them. Good thing they had their safety goggles. As they kept going into the night, Edgar could see his team's morale was low, to say the least. "I know it's been rough, but legends say it shouldn't be too much further. We have to go further than anyone else has before, yeah? And when we do, it'll be so worth it. Anna, we will be archaeology legends. We will be in history books. Dean, the discovery will make you rich. So rich you'll even be able to buy that vacation home in Sutopolis you've been eyeing." Dean had enough of this. Edgar had given the same speech 7 times now. It was midnight now, or at least that's what Dean assumed. His Pokenav was dead, so he had no true way of knowing. "You keep saying that," Dean's voice shook. He had stopped in his tracks. He was trying to hold it together, but he really had had enough. His fists were clenched by his side, so tight they slightly twitched. The desert ruins are a legend, Edgar. A legend. That means that just as well as they could exist, they could not exist at all. Dean had lost control and was yelling now. I'm so done with this, Edgar. I'm done with you. He turned around, began to walk as his best friend and his wife stared at him, too taken aback to even be able to usher out a word. He looked back over his shoulder. This isn't worth all the riches in the world. I'm sorry, Edgar, but it's always something with you, and I've had it. First that Mirage Island near Pacific Log that we never found, by the way. Then the appearance of Hoopa, a Pokemon we don't even know exists in the Hoenn region. Never found that either. Now this. I can't anymore. Anna, I truly wish you the best. And then he calmly walked away into the night. Anna turned to her husband. She knew that had to hurt. Edgar did have a tendency to focus on legends that no one even really knew to be true, but that's honestly what she loved about him. He'd get so excited talking about all these things you'd think he was a child watching a Pokemon battle. He was looking down and wiped his sleeve across his face. Then he looked up, took a deep breath, and smiled. Boy, is he going to feel dumb when we find this thing. Anna couldn't help but smile back. And then, a scream. When you're in the desert in the thick of night, it's so quiet apart from the roaring winds. A scream cuts through that quiet like a scyther. Both Edgar and Anna's hearts dropped. They turned to each other, then ran in the direction of their old friend Dean. On a rock, they found Dean's Pokénav and his safety goggles, but Dean was nowhere to be found. Edgar turned to his wife, doing his best to steady his voice so not to show he was scared. Dean hates bug types. I bet he had a skirmish with a Skorupi. Yeah, that's it. Probably dropped the stuff to outrun the thing. We should keep going. Anna nodded and turned to follow her husband, knowing well that Skorupi didn't live in the home region, but also knowing how important this expedition was to her husband, and knowing how much he could use a whim right now. Besides, while not bug types, Trapinch and Vibrava are very similar to bug types and do live in Hoenn's desert. Edgar's prediction could be true, just about one of these Pokemon and not Skorupi. She didn't let her mind stay on the fact that Edgar's proposal of a Skorupi likely meant he didn't believe his own story. It was odd. The desert sandstorms seemed to be picking up. And then they seemed to be picking up a lot more. The duo could see maybe a few feet ahead of them. There are rumors of protections placed to keep people from getting into the desert ruins, said Edgar, any confidence lost now restored. Surely this sandstorm only serves as proof of its existence. His optimism once again made Anna smile. She could feel her safety goggles begin to shake on her head. She'd need to tighten them to get through the sandstorm. With one hand, she grabbed the strap right above her ear, using the other to pull it to tighten. It seemed to be jammed, so she loosened the strap a little to retighten it. Suddenly, as if a living thing seizing this opportunity, the sandstorm sent one strong gust, strong enough to rip the loosened safety goggles from her grasp and off her head. Edgar, my safety goggles! Edgar turned behind him where his wife was, the sandstorm so strong now he could only see inches ahead of him, and only hear his wife's voice. Oh, Edgar, is that you? His wife called, but she seemed even further away. But then Edgar heard her scream, and it was enough to put him in full panic mode. Anna! Edgar called out to his wife. Anna, where are you? He walked aimlessly around, searching for his wife, when a crunching noise suddenly came from below his foot. His heart dropped. He looked down below his foot to find his wife's now broken pair of safety goggles. His heart now felt like it was using extreme speed to get out of his own chest. And he began to run in every direction when, bam! He ran straight into a structure. The sandstorm, once again as if on cue, ended. Completely cleared. There before him stood the desert ruins. In a dreamlike state, he hobbled around to the entrance. Sealed. Nothing he could do to open it. He fell to the ground, sobbing, when then he heard something. Feet trudging through the desert sands. "Anna, is that you?" He rose immediately to his feet. No response. "Anna?" Still no response. "Anna, the desert ruins, it's right here," he said happily, turning back to the entrance, leaving his back to the open desert. "It's sealed, though. I don't know why or how, but I just can't get in." He could hear the footsteps again, now right behind him. This time, though, it seemed like more than just one person. "Anna?" he said, knowing deep down his wife wasn't behind him. He turned around, and there before him stood a ragtag group of the Scarecrow Pokemon, Cacturne, now completely surrounding him. A blood-curdling scream. That was what Liam awoke to. Having just woke up, it was like it was just his reflexes running him to wherever his wife was, downstairs in their son's bedroom. When he got there, he woke up very quickly. His son's bedroom was empty. The window was open. His son was 6 years old. This wasn't just a rebellious thing. This was... "Someone took him," screamed his wife, rightfully panicked. "I'm calling Officer Jenny. I'll check around," Liam responded. He was trying to stay calm for his wife, but frankly, he was justifiably terrified. He ran out the door, running through their quiet town, screaming for his son. He searched around the town, asked neighbors. No luck. And then he saw Officer Jenny talking to a man. "Officer," he called to her, running over. "Officer, my son." "Don't worry, sir. I talked to your wife," she responded. "We have the Growlithe on the trail." "And it led here?" Liam asked. "Well, Growlithe has brought us to every house. I'm going to be candid with you, sir. It seems like whoever did this was going to multiple houses. Not all of them. And we can't yet find any similarities amongst them. Some have kids, some don't. Some are widows, one a newlywed couple." Liam turned to the man she was speaking to. "John, please think, was there anything strange that happened last night?" "Well," John hesitated, I don't mean to poke fun, but the only thing weird was that I was having a dream that slowly just began to fade mid-dream, and I could feel the pain from it, as if the dream itself was being ripped out of my mind. I even woke up from it all, but I went back to sleep. Didn't check the time or nothing." Officer Jenny began. "Every house we visited has mentioned something similar." It hit Liam. "The same thing happened to me last night," he exclaimed. "It was exhausting. I even woke up really drowsy because of it." At this point, the Growlithe darted into the woods neighboring the town, with Officer Jenny and Liam darting after it. As they ran, Officer Jenny turned to Liam. "This could get very dangerous, sir. Please go back to your home." "That's my son," responded Liam. "I'm not turning back." And they ran into the trees. As they chased Growlithe through the brush, they came to a clearing, and there lied a cave. Growlithe stopped and turned to his trainer, and nodded. This was the place. Growlithe could tell that the son was in that cave. Liam's son was in there, hopefully all right. Officer Jenny held out her arm, motioning Liam to stop. She turned to him and began to whisper, "We don't know who is in there, or what they are capable of. We need to be cautious. I'll go in and apprehend the suspect. You be here for when your son runs out." Liam nodded, and then his eyes were drawn back to the cave due to movement. "Look, a Drowsy!" Sure enough, a Drowsy could be seen hobbling out of the cave. "That must be one of the suspect's Pokemon," replied Jenny. Psychic types are common choices amongst criminals due to psychic powers being able to assist in crimes. In a kidnapper's case, a Pokemon known for learning hypnosis makes a lot of sense. That would also explain why you and some other people reported the strange, painful dreams. Drowsy feasts on dreams. You may have been the victim of its move Dream Eater. Your son may be asleep or in a trance in there from the drowsy. But don't worry, we have this. She searched her pocket and handed Growlithe a chesto berry. Just in case, she said. Alright, Growlithe, let's get the first move. Go in and use Bite on that drowsy. Growlithe obeyed her command, launching a super effective Bite attack on the Hypnosis Pokemon. Drowsy yelled out into the cave, then launched a Confusion attack, sending Growlithe backwards. Now out from the cave emerged a Hypno, who used its own Confusion attack on Growlithe, throwing it up in the air, then slamming it back down to the ground. Oh man, there's two of them. Heat Wave, Jenny called. Growlithe let loose a massive wave of fire, capable of hitting both opponents. Liam saw his chance and snuck around into the cave. Yeah, it was dangerous, as the criminal was still in there, but this was his son. He ran deep into the cave, searching around. It was kind of dark, so it was hard to see. And then he could see just in front of him. His son lied there. No one else. Could the kidnapper be out right now and left his two Pokemon to stand guard? And come to think of it, why would a kidnapper abduct a kid and then just go to a cave right outside of the town? Surely they ought to be on the move because people would be searching for them. His son was very pale. Very much alive, but pale, as if sick, as if it had been drained of the drowsy. It must have been keeping him asleep to eat his dreams. Wait, but does that mean... Liam tried to process the situation. Did the Hypno kidnap his child? Liam picked up his son and ran out from the cave, where Jenny and Growlithe were struggling to battle the two Pokemon. Officer, throw a Pokeball at them. That doesn't work when they belong to someone. I know that, Liam responded, but they don't. Jenny seemed confused, but nonetheless pulled out two Pokeballs and hurled them towards Drowsy and Hypno, taking them both inside. Jenny and Liam stood there, watching the two Pokeballs. Felt like full minutes were going by. Shake. 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 Click. The two Pokemon were caught. Liam and Jenny brought the boy back home, who was already quickly recovering. Yet, while a happy ending, a chill crept over Liam. That Hypno, it kidnapped his son. This doesn't happen. This hasn't happened before, but now it has? Could it again? How could they stop it? What if the next Hypno is smarter, takes his son further? Was it intentional? Was it unintentional? A side effect of the hypnosis? Liam sat by his son's bedside, beads of sweat pouring down his face as he realized that his world, the Pokemon world, was a truly dangerous one. Why on earth is this shop open 24/7? Jordan wondered. No one is even out past 9 in this town. Jordan was irritated that he had, after successfully avoiding it for 2 years, finally got stuck with the night shift at the shop he worked at. The townspeople did indeed stick to a tight curfew. There have been reports over decades, in fact, so long ago that Jordan's parents remembered hearing them as kids, of a cult or gang of some kind that kidnapped wanderers at night, be it man, Pokemon, even children. So the townspeople, being a suspicious people, lived by a curfew. It wasn't a law, just something everyone collectively followed, and everyone was in their homes by 9 p.m. So Jordan really despised that their shop even had a late shift. He lasted a while, but sometime after midnight, he'd lost his cool and closed up shop, then set sights for home. His town was settled alongside a lake, but one with plenty of crocodile, so no one went swimming in it. To the east was a small forest next to the lake. His house was just beyond that. It may sound far, but he could see it from the town, as it was all nestled around, as if their lives revolved around it, this lake. He began to walk toward the forest. Snap. Something stepped on a twig. It didn't even faze Jordan. Probably a furret. It's a forest. Pokemon live there. He kept walking. Then he heard a bleat. A bleat from a Mareep. Now that was odd. Mareep don't live in the forest. Only Mareep around here are at the local farm. One must have gotten out, he thought to himself. I'll get it and take it back to the farm. He headed towards the bank of the lake, where he heard the cry come from. Upon coming out of the tree line, his heart dropped. There was not one, but 5 Mareep, all tied together on a set of boards, like a raft. He ran over to them and began to untie the ropes that bound them. "Hey!" a voice cried out. "What do you think you're doing?" Jordan turned. A man was running in his direction from down the bank. 2 more came out of the woods and also began to run towards him. Could the stories of the cult have been true? With one final tug, he removed the ropes, and the Mareep scattered. The men turned their direction to the Mareep and began to chase after them. "Help us out, Pidgeotto! Twister!" Jordan sent out his trusty Pokemon who had helped him fly many deliveries from the shop. Pidgeotto's Twister stopped the men in their tracks, allowing for the Mareep to escape. The men turned their attention back to Jordan and his Pidgeotto. "I'll handle this," a voice came from the forest, and a woman in a cloak came out. "Crobat, come out!" Jordan hadn't done a ton of battling with Pidgeotto, and in truth, it was low-leveled, only recently evolving from Pidgey, so he was rightfully nervous. "Aerial Ace, Pidgeotto!" Pidgeotto let loose its newest move. "Brave bird, Crobat," she called out. Her voice was calm, as if she already knew she had won. When Crobat and Pidgeotto collided, it was that easy. Pidgeotto was down. Jordan recalled his Pokemon. "Who are you people?" "That doesn't matter. You took away the lake's sacrifice, so now you will stand in its place." Jordan didn't fully understand, but he knew well enough he didn't want to be here anymore. He ran as fast as he could down the shore back into town. The woman's Crobat flew quickly, blocking its path menacingly. Then a roar came from the center of the lake, causing Jordan and the Crobat to turn to its direction. "We haven't much time," said the woman from behind him. "I know you don't understand what's going on here, and I understand that we look rather suspicious, but for generations, my people have been protecting this town from its wrath." Jordan glanced back towards the lake. What was in there? He turned to the lady again, startled. "If the lake doesn't get its sacrifice," she began, "then it will choose the whole town as its meal." "Well, you're all more than welcome to take that role," he yelled back. "It's not that simple," replied the woman. "As I said, my people have carried out this tradition for ages now. If we are gone, no one would be left to carry out the ritual. The lake would get angry, and then the lake would swallow the town eventually." Another roar came from the center of the lake. Crobat turned towards it. This was Jordan's chance. He fully jumped at the Crobat, tackling it down. Then he sprinted as fast as he could towards the woods. As he ran, he looked back over his shoulder. No one was looking at him, their attention on the lake. The men were shaking. "Go get him, you fools!" cried the woman. The men stayed fixated on the lake. They were frozen by fear. The woman had a very cold presence, and yet whatever was roaring from that lake scared them more. "Go get him, you fools!" the woman said more sternly. And then another roar from the lake. The woman looked down. She knew it was too late. "He angered it!" yelled one of the men, finally snapping out of their trance. "You fools!" called another man. "One of you swim to it! Sacrifice yourselves so that we may all live!" "No," said the woman, rather calmly, as if she'd accepted their fate. "It's too late now." She turned and looked at Jordan and said, "I hope you're happy now." Then, as if summoned, a Gyarados emerged from the lake. very visibly angry. The last thing Jordan saw before his death were flames spewing from Gyarados' mouth onto the town, then onto the forest, and then onto him. Emily, a young 8-year-old girl, loved the island she called home. The people were friendly. She'd walk to school and along the way get to see the beach, feel the salty breeze in her hair, hear the wingulls calling from the sky. On her way back, she'd pass a fruit stand where the same old lady, a sweet widow named Miss Ryder, always had a malasada for her. She was very sweet. On this particular day, though, the woman's fruit stand was unattended. Miss Ryder's house, just beyond the stand, had 2 men in black suits with sunglasses guarding the door. 2 black cars were parked across the street in front of the house. Emily stopped to look. "Hey, kid," one of the men in black shouted to her. "Move along." Emily kept on to her house. That was weird. As she opened the door to her house, she could hear her parents arguing. So much so, they didn't even hear her come in. This was unusual for her parents, so instead of going upstairs to her room, Emily sat on the steps, listening. "This is like the 4th one in a week," her father said. "And it was right here, in Howoli City. People are talking. They said this one isn't like the others. It didn't just appear and disappear. It's staying there. They are saying sketchy government people have taken over that area. I saw 2 of them when I went down there. These portals, or whatever they are getting worse. They are called ultra wormholes, and you are making such a big deal about this," her mother responded. "My grandma would tell me stories of them as a kid. They've been spotted in Alola for like forever. Besides, what's to worry about? We live in a world with Pokemon. Any day a Lycanroc could come into town and attack the school. A Gyarados could eat a swimmer. But they don't. It just doesn't happen. This is just the work of some Pokemon's move or something. I mean, have you never seen a trainer use a Z-move? Much scarier than this. Much more dangerous looking. But still fine. This isn't normal. We never had anything like this where I grew up, back in Johto," her father responded. "And this one is different. No one has heard or seen Miss Ryder. They think it swallowed her." Emily's heart sank at the sound of this. Miss Ryder was gone? She ran around the corner to her parents. "What happened to Miss Ryder?" she asked with tears gathering in her eyes. "Oh, it's probably nothing, sweetie," her father consoled her with a smile. "She must have family over or something." Emily nodded, wiping her tears from her eyes, then walked back up to her room. As she kept up the stairs, she heard her mother whisper, "Just please don't make a big deal about all this. It'll all be fine. We don't need to worry Emily." That night, Emily awoke to a grumble that shook the house. Then vehicles racing past her home. It was late. No one in Howoli was out this late. She opened her blinds to peek out. Several black cars were racing towards Miss Ryder's house. She heard movement in the house and ran to her door, then quietly tiptoed to the top of the stairs. Her father was putting on a jacket in front of the front door. "I have to see what this is about. Stay here with Emily. I'll be back. Something isn't right, and I need to keep my family safe." In her father's hand was a Pokeball. Her father hadn't battled since... Actually, Emily didn't even know when. She certainly wasn't born yet the last time he battled. Something must be wrong. Her father walked out, and her mother walked onto the porch, head turned towards Miss Ryder's house. Emily was worried about her dad, and so she rushed down the stairs and out the back door so she could sneak over to Miss Ryder's. She was far enough from her own house to be able to get back onto the sidewalk at this point. Up ahead, she could see dozens of cars, police, and the same black cars she saw before. A helicopter was now flying in too. A bunch of people were standing around talking, all uniforms. A bunch of the same men dressed in black, as well as the police, some men in white, and a woman in a white dress with long blonde hair. With her was a stern-looking man in a brown trench coat. He was clearly in charge. Her dad, she could see, was arguing with a policeman who wouldn't let him pass. "What's going on over here?" said the man in the trench coat, approaching the cop and Emily's father. "This guy won't leave," said the cop, who sounded exhausted. "Look, you have to understand," her father piped up. "I have a family here, a wife and a daughter. Please, I need to know what's going on." The man in the trench coat looked down, then looked back up to Emily's father. "There's an ultra wormhole right over there, you see?" Gesturing towards Miss Ryder's house. Emily couldn't see as the department store was blocking the home from her perspective. "Of course I see it. It's massive," her father said, now exhausted. "Well, it's growing," responded the man. "But it's okay. A Pokemon is just trying to get through. But when it does, we will catch it. We have before, several times. And this time," he pulled out of his pocket something. Emily couldn't see what it was from where she was standing. Her father gasped. Master Ball. I've never seen one before." The man in the trench coat grinned. "You can return home. We have this taken care of. But we do appreciate your concern." Then the same grumble echoed again from Miss Ryder's home, shaking the street. Emily walked closer so she could see it. There it was. Her father was right. It was massive. A massive hole was just sitting there, floating in the air. It had taken in some of Miss Ryder's house at this point. "What about Miss Ryder?" Emily asked as she ran over to her father and the man. "Is she okay?" "Emily!" Her dad was clearly very angry. "You should not be here," he scolded. "Miss Ryder is quite fine," said the man in the trench coat. "She's actually staying at the Ether Foundation, well taken care of. Miss Lucamine, could you attend to the child while I talk to her father some more?" The blonde woman spoke up. I'm not great with kids." "Oh, that's right," said the man, clearly embarrassed. "Emily, was it? Let me talk to your father some more." He took her father past the police line. Emily couldn't see much, just the man put his hand on her father's shoulder, and her father looked down. She knew that man lied to her, that Miss Ryder was really gone. Then another grumble from the hole in the sky. A strange man dressed as an astronaut with a purple mustache and beard ran up to the woman known as Lucamine. "We can confirm now, Miss Lucamine. I know that growl. I've heard it too many times, and too many times I've seen the disaster that follows. That's UB5 Glutton, ma'am." He turned to the trenchcoat man. "You'll need that catch-all guaranteed ball at ready." The man in the trenchcoat pulled a purple Pokeball marked with a white M. "Everyone brace yourselves. Readings say it's coming through." Sure enough, a black pincher emerged from the hole, and like it was nothing, scooped up what was left of Miss Ryder's home and tossed it backwards. A giant blue mouth with several rows of teeth, even on its black tongue, emerged, chomping down on what was left of the house. Then the whole Pokemon emerged. It was massive, bigger than the hole even. It was terrifying. "Now!" shouted Lucamine. The man in the trenchcoat tossed the ball at the beast, who turned to it and immediately crushed it with its teeth, and then swallowed it. Everyone stood silent, shocked. Panicked, Emily's dad called out, "Tyranitar, let's go!" sending out his trusty Tyranitar. "Rock slide, quick!" Tyranitar summoned rocks from thin air, hurling them down on this UB5 glutton. It looked up at the stones and swallowed them whole as well. Then it turned towards Emily's father and his Tyranitar, and launched an attack. Hammer Arm, if Emily wasn't mistaken. It was an immediate knockout. Emily's dad recalled his Pokemon, then closed his eyes, bracing to be swallowed whole by UB5 Glutton. "Wait!" Emily screamed. She ran in front of her father, arms stretched out. "Please, don't hurt my father, Mr. Glutton. Please." The beast paused, staring at Emily in the eye, then turned to the surrounding men and began attacking, eating anything in its path. The cars, the tech, the men. Emily felt a tug on her arm. It was the trenchcoat man. "Come on," he yelled to her and her father. "We have to get out of here." He ran with them to the helicopter, where Lusamine was already waiting. UB5 Glutton now turning towards the street, eating up buildings, already taking a giant chunk out of the department store. In the pilot seat was a strange man with green goggles. "Hurry!" he called as Lusamine, the trenchcoat man, Emily, and her father piled into the helicopter. Everyone turned back as UB5 began making its way even more through the city. "My wife!" cried Emily's father. "We have to go back for my wife!" "There's no time," replied Lusamine. "If we do that, we risk losing all of us, including your daughter. And trust me, if you think losing your spouse is hard, you do not want to lose your children too." Emily could tell that the lady seemed to have some kind of experience with this. The helicopter took off. In the distance, lit by moonlight, was a strange yellow Pokemon gliding down towards Howoli City. "Tapu Koko," said her father, with a glimmer of hope in his voice. "The guardian deity has come to fight. He's our only chance now," said the trenchcoat man. "Get us out of here, Faba." "Right," replied the man piloting the helicopter, and they took off. By the time they arrived at the base, a floating island called Ether Paradise, Emily had fallen asleep, exhausted from all that had happened. When she woke up, she was in a bed in a white room. Her father was next to her in a chair, visibly upset. "Dad," she began, "is Mom all right? Did Tapu Koko save her?" Her dad began to sob. The trenchcoat man walked in. "You need to know the truth." He pulled out a remote, clicking a button, and on the TV appeared the ruins of Howoli City, with UB5 Glutton chomping down on buildings still, Tapu Koko nowhere in sight. "He lost," said the man. "But I saw something out there. It reminded me of trainers I've come across in the past. You made, somehow, a connection to UB5 Glutton, or what was it you called it? Mr. Glutton? It stopped in its tracks. Something it hasn't done since, mind you. You're a few years younger than the normal age of a Pokemon trainer, but you may be our only hope. Mele Mele has fallen, but maybe, just maybe, we can save the rest of Alola. Perhaps even the entire world. You won't be going alone, though. Miss Lusamine had a project. They deemed it a failure, but it may be time to put it to the test again." He held his hand out, and in it was a Pokeball. In this Pokeball is a project designed to kill Ultra Beasts, extra-dimensional creatures like our new adversary, Mr. Glutton. The project is called Type Null. It should be of great use in getting you to Mr. Glutton, after training with it here, of course, for the appropriate amount of time. And it should be able to protect you should that moment with Mr. Glutton be meaningless. Emily stared at the Pokeball, and in that Pokeball, and in her own self reflecting from that Pokeball, she could almost swear that she saw hope for Alola's future. It's 2 a.m. On cue, I hear his footsteps. Every morning, at 2 a.m., on the dot, my neighbor leaves his apartment and goes off into the night. He never cares to keep it down, either. He's so loud. He isn't in a rush, just doesn't seem to care. I open my blinds to see him in the parking lot now. He sends out his Cyclizar and climbs on, riding off into the night. The whole time he seems to be in a zombie-like state, as if under some kind of trance. After weeks of this, my curiosity gets the better of me. I rush out of my apartment and send out my Corviknight. Together we fly off, hoping to find my neighbor. It doesn't take much time before we do. He seems to be heading up to the ruins on the hill. I tell Corviknight to take me there as well. Upon arrival, I hide so as not to disturb my neighbor and recall my Pokemon. Why is my neighbor coming out here to these abandoned ruins outside of town at 2 a.m. every morning? I've heard of cults dedicated to a Pokemon believed to be on the reverse side of our world. Could he be a part of something like this? Then something on the ground catches my eye as it reflects the moonlight, shining brilliantly. I pick up the gold object and put it in my pocket. Looks like it could be worth something. My neighbor has now arrived. He seems to be in a state of hypnosis still, but not near as low energy as before. Now he's sporadic, glancing in all directions, shifting about, muttering to himself. He gets on the ground, crawling around and searching frantically, till he finally reaches an old stone. He lets out a bone-chilling laugh, the kind that truly, if nothing else until now has, makes him seem crazy. He moves the stone, still in a fit of maniacal laughter, and begins digging excitedly with his bare hands. After a few minutes of digging and muttering and laughing, he finally bursts into a much bigger, booming laugh, now holding up something that shines in the moonlight. I'm too far away to make out what exactly it is. 760! 760! He shouts excitedly. He then climbs back onto Cyclozar and races back to the apartment complex, laughing the whole way. I have Corviknight beat him there. At this point, I'm concerned. Really concerned. My neighbor needs help. When he arrives, he doesn't even seem to notice me. John, I speak up to him, but he just walks right by me without giving me so much as a glance. Did he even see me? He has a wide smile, though, and keeps saying happily, 239 to go. I follow him inside, still trying to get his attention the whole time. He opens his apartment and laughs, then goes in, excitedly, even leaving the door open. I peek around the corner. There in the middle of his living room sits a chest. John kneels before it, holding out his hands. 760, he says. He sounds happy, but there also seems to be a bit of fear or uneasiness in his voice. The chest slowly opens, and inside sits a little gray figure. Is that a Pokemon? In his hands, I finally see what he grabbed at the ruins. A gold coin, just like the one I'd grabbed. He places the coin in the chest, then looks at the creature in it, saying, 760, only 239 to go. Something compels me. What is this? What is this? I do what I feel forced to do. I reach into my pocket, grab the gold coin from earlier, and rush to the chest, offering up my gold coin as the 761st piece to Gimmighoul. The offering is accepted. Only 238 more to go. I will search for more coins tomorrow. There's a tale here in the land of Kitakami, one that we've passed down for many, many generations now. I remember my grandpa telling it to me as a kid, and he always said he heard it from his own grandfather. I don't know if it's true, but it doesn't matter if it's true. It's enough. Enough to keep the people of Kitakami from venturing into the timeless woods at night. You see, there lives a beast in those woods, and it only comes out on a foggy night. Razor-sharp claws, teeth that could shred you in two, a glowing green eye said to be able to see even the supernatural, and the mark of a blood moon, giving it the name, the Blood Moon Beast. No one here really knows for sure what it is. Some say it's a Pokemon that came here from the north a long, long time ago. Others suggest it could somehow be related to the ogre from Kitakami's history. Some just don't believe in this legend at all. No one dares to find out, though. The Timeless Woods are blessed. They are home to a rare form of Basilisk that bears a white stripe, instead of the more common blue or red seen in other regions. This Basilisk is loved by the people of Kitakami, as, well, to be frank, it's delicious. They can also achieve a more powerful evolution called Basilegion, and every once in a while, when they come back from a fishing trip at the Timeless Woods, I'll hear fishermen talk about seeing a Basilegion's corpse, torn to shreds from a slash attack. How is this possible? People will ask, as a ghost-type Pokemon like Basilegion should be immune to a normal-type attack like Slash. It must be the work of the Blood Moon Beast. That's what the fishermen will say. An old man in the village once saw it, or so he claims. It says he tried to battle it, to catch it, and it summoned a Blood Moon with an attack, then used the Blood Moon's power as its own, defeating the man. Again, I don't know if it's true. Maybe there is no Blood Moon Beast. But I don't intend to find out. It's now sundown in this small town, so kids must call it a day. But not Lil Jim, no sir. He just wants to play. Every night he sits and watches for the Requiem Mon. To tell his friend he's still awake, he leaves his lamplight on. Then it arrives with its kin and smiles at little old Jim, Duskull and its 4 friends. They laugh and play and they dance until the night ends. But before the sun's back up, the Duskull must move along. They each give Jim a hug, then sing him a little song. When they all leave, Jim is fast asleep. The reason why is because of Duskull, and it's real deep. You see, the thing about the Requiem Mon is it needs energy to keep moving on. And this small ghost finds its energy host in the children who have so much. So the Duskull always come when it's dusk. So lock your doors and get ready to fight, because this Pokemon, this Duskull, it comes out every night. When arriving in Kitakami, after moving from Unova, there was a lot of things to feel a bit of culture shock about for the Kettle family. The father, an optimistic man named Matthew, was excited to live that simple life as a farmer in Kitakami. He had purchased some land there and was excited to get out of the big city and his office job to work off the land. But he was surprised at just how little there was in Kitakami. No fast food, no easy access to emergency services. It was definitely smaller than Castelia, that's for sure. His wife, Chelsea, was excited for their life in the country, but was also shocked to find that there wasn't much to do there. And their son, Paul, well, he just didn't understand why he couldn't have his favorite snack, matcha cookies. You see, in the land of Kitakami, matcha brings about a dangerous Pokemon. The family was still getting settled in their new home and knew about this tale, so they made sure not to bring any matcha. Their house was a real fixer-upper. The floors creaked, making a sound like someone was walking around in the middle of the night. And Chelsea swore that one of her teacups was placed in a cabinet, but found it on the floor, broken. Weirdest of all, perhaps, was the strange tea caddy left in the attic. The house was cleared out by the previous owner, so why'd they forget this? It was old and rustic, though, so Matthew kinda liked it and had it out on display in the kitchen. The family did their best with the house. They got used to the creaking. They started chalking up the strange disappearances of or moving of items to their imagination. But then one day, one fateful day, Chelsea stepped outside to hang some clothes up on the line to dry while Matthew was out in the fields, unaware that their lives would change forever. Little Paul came running out of the house and gave his mom a hug. He thanked her for the cookies she baked that morning, just for him. She smiled and told him she was glad he liked them. "Of course I like them," said Paul. "Matcha is my favorite." Chelsea froze. She didn't put matcha on the cookies. She knows not to do that here. She walks inside and sure enough, there's matcha sprinkled onto the cookies. Chelsea was confused, but ultimately chalked this up to her being tired. It's been a pretty stressful time with the new home and, tending to the fields. It's very different from their life in Castelia, so surely this was some kind of mistake. And maybe there was still some matcha that she had when she brought all of her spices and herbs, and she sprinkled them on the cookies out of habit. I don't know. That's reasonable to believe, right? She certainly doesn't remember doing that. But that must be it, right? Well, the damage is done now. It'd be best to eat them before Matthew gets home and starts to worry, as the people of Kitakami are very adamant about not having matcha. She helps Paul finish the rest of them. Hours later, Matthew arrives. He puts up his tools in the shed and heads inside. When he opens the door, he lets out a scream. There on the ground are his wife and child, seemingly lifeless and only barely breathing. He looks out the window and sees a small Pokemon inhabiting the tea caddy they'd found in the attic, flying off into the night. Let this story be a lesson. The next time you find a mysterious item in a new home, or maybe there's some strange occurrences happening, or maybe some bumps in the night, don't excuse it. Don't shrug it off. You can never be too careful in the terrifying world of Pokemon. It's a beautiful day in the village. My daughter and I are coming back from the Apple Hills, collecting some apples for a nice, delicious dessert. "How are they looking?" a villager calls to me. "Real good. Sweet apples, tart apples, all aplenty. You and the missus better get on 'em before they're gone." My daughter and I continue on our way when we turn the corner and... who are those Pokemon? Three Pokemon stand before us. A green, bulky Pokemon, a beautiful bird Pokemon, and a blue Pokemon with a kind of large head. And call me crazy, but I could have sworn a pink round Pokemon was just here but disappeared. Either way, it's strange to see wild Pokemon in the village, especially ones that I don't even recognize from the land of Kitakami. They seem to be happy, though. They are laughing together while marveling at these gorgeous masks they have, very similar to those that the two travelers who would visit us in the village every once in a while would wear. About this time, I hear a blood-curdling screech coming from the mountain. I turn to see a masked creature running with a cudgel wrapped in ivy. It's an ogre. Ogre, run! I hear around me the villagers all panicking, frantically trying to get inside. We are still a ways from home. We won't make it. The trio of Pokemon look up towards the ogre, drop the mask, and get into a fighting stance. Are they here to protect us? Surely that must be it. They knew the ogre was coming and came here to save us from it. No time to focus on that. I grab my daughter, throw her on my back, and rush to the nearest house. The door is locked. I turn back. The ogre has reached the village. It violently swings its cudgel at the trio. The bird Pokemon flies away, leaving the large green Pokemon and the small blue Pokemon to fight it. They're buying us time. I can't waste it. I run. I don't know where to, just away. I can feel my daughter shaking, terrified on my back. And then she screams. I glance back and the small blue Pokemon is lying on the ground. Has it fainted? No, I think it's dead. I can't see the other green Pokemon or the ogre, and the bird Pokemon must be long gone by now, but I can still hear commotion from their battle. I rush to an old shed, get inside, and barricade the door. My daughter asks me if we are going to die. Of course not, I tell her. Did you see those three Pokemon? They're going to protect us, but we need to be quiet, okay? She nods and we wait. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes. Felt like hours, but I'm sure that's just the nerves. I can hear the fighting even still. In this shed. Is it getting closer? No. Yes, it is definitely getting closer. A bang on the door. My daughter whimpers and I cover her mouth. There it is again. The large green Pokemon falls through the wall of the shed, and there it is, that hideous ogre, hiding itself behind a teal mask. It raises its cudgel, ready to deliver the final blow to the green Pokemon, when suddenly, it's hit from behind, and the bird Pokemon swoops in. The ogre gets back up and launches itself at the bird, cracking down on its head with its cudgel. The bird is down. The green Pokemon grabs the ogre from behind, and quickly meets the same fate as its two friends. The ogre turns towards me and my daughter. We're next. But then, what's this? A tear. I swear, I saw a tear fall from behind that mask. Then it turned away and ran off towards Oni Mountain. Why did it spare us? A change of heart? Was it all a misunderstanding? I don't know. But I like to think that the three Pokemon who died were there that day to protect us. They laid down their lives to show their loyalty to the village and its people. My daughter and I can go apple picking every day from here on because of them. Will the ogre return? Maybe. But I like to think that even in death, the loyal three will watch over us, and the ogre will stay far away.